Gosh, I'm thrilled to see you all here today. Welcome, everybody, to the pre-launch show for the Sales Ops Design Shop. I see we've got attendees rolling in, friends and family, people excited to see this book finally make it out into the ether. And I am just so excited to hear from all of you, just some of your thoughts, some of your ideas, the things that you were working through as you were making your way through your chapters. And to everybody who is attending, tomorrow is our official launch day, and we will be sharing with you all details on how you can pick up your own copy of this either on Amazon Kindle tomorrow or through Amazon on paperback after that. So, as we get started, I just want to say hello. I am Dr. Shannon Gregg, and we have been incubating the concept for this book with everybody whose faces you see here for the better part of a decade. We've been working on it for quite some time. We conceptualized what did it take to create a sales operations group out of nothing when you are running a high performance sales team. And of course, many things happened during that time. We were hit by COVID, which changed the way that salespeople were doing their sales presentations, their bid defenses, the way that they were reaching out to prospects and standing up behind their proposals. We were hit by AI. And so every time this book felt like it was edging towards being released, something major happened that caused us to go back and say, now it's time for us to scratch our heads and return to the drawing board. And we now are so confident that this is going to be a wonderful blueprint for you if you're looking at scaling or growing your sales team with sales operations. Scott Ballinger, you're going to be the first person that I introduce to give us a little behind because you wrote the foreword. So thanks, Scott, for joining us today and tell us a little bit about what you're thinking about this book.
Shannon, thank you. And I'm so grateful you invited me to be part of this project with all of these great panelists. And the timing is never going to be perfect, but over that time period that you talked about, the tectonic plates were moving underneath us, but increasingly sales operations just became more and more important. And now you see some people thinking that this is going to be their first commercial hire versus a customer facing role when they think about building teams. And I was really honored that you asked me to write the foreword, and I did the on your left sort of theme because, as everyone on this panel knows and everyone in sales operations knows, it's not a static position ever. You are either being passed or passing, and you're constantly on the move, constantly making adjustments and changing. And I tried to capture that in introducing all the expertise that's going to follow on the pages behind my forward. But thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Scott. For those of you that know Scott, you're lucky. For those of you that don't, I suggest you connect with him because he has some of the best podcast recommendations I have ever heard in my life. So, Scott, thank you so much for writing about On Your Left. I think it was a perfect way to start this dynamic book, and I am so thankful that you joined us here. We start our book off with a chapter on what is sales operations. And for many of you who are working in SaaS, you hear terms like RevOps or marketing ops or go-to-market ops. And everyone here believes sales is a wonderful word, not a bad word. So we wanted to say sales operations because that's truly what we're talking about here. How do you work in and around sales? So we give you a brief overview of the history of sales operations at the beginning of the book. I'm excited for all of you to get your hands on it and hear what you think. We talk a little bit about where sales operations fits because I think everybody who's on this call has been in a sales ops team or managed a sales ops team that has been in multiple places. We are beholden to sales, to finance, to marketing, to operations, and that's why sales operations is such a critical piece of a commercial team. And so we talk a little bit about how it fits in, what the history is, and then we dig into all of the different roles you may have in your sales operations team. So every chapter gives you some philosophy and strategy behind it, some job descriptions, some things that will make people successful in these roles. And the first one we talk about, my friend Dr. Nichols wrote a chapter on the role of the head of sales operations. Dr. Nichols is also known to many of you as the dissertation whisperer because were it not for him, I probably might not have finished mine. Dr. Nichols, welcome. Thanks for joining us today and tell us a little bit about your chapter. Soon as you come off of mute, my friend.
But somebody must have sent me a tip to be able to unmute. I've got a different screen on. It's a pleasure to be a part of this. And even though Dr. Shannon indicates that she would not have finished her PhD without me, I've always insisted that she would have finished it without me. I think that she brought enough to the table to be able to accomplish that as a great task. One of the things that I wrote about in my chapter dealt with selecting the right person. And when I think of sales, I don't just think of a sales organization. I think that most organizations deal with sales, whether they see it that way or not. In order for any business to advance, they've got to have some sales tips. They've got to have sales practices. They've got to have some expertise. And the person who leads the organization has a critical role in order to not only identify others as great talent, but also to bring certain characteristics, certain skills to that particular table. When the individual is able to do that, then they're able to assemble people who have like minds, who are committed to the mission of the organization, and eventually, hopefully, grow the organization.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Nichols, for your contribution to this and many other academic works, because I think you are one of the most prolific authors I've ever met in my life. So thank you for lending your talents
Thank
to
you.
this. The next person I want to introduce you to in chapter 4, we talk about inside sales and sales development. Monica Venturella has started this role up in many companies. And Monica, I know no one knows more about the strategy of this role than you do.
Oh, thanks, Shannon. That's nice of you to say. And thanks for having me. And it feels like we started this eons ago. And there's some principles that don't change. A lot changes within sales development, but some of the principles that don't change is the mission. And I think it's in its simplest form and most powerful form, it's these folks open doors to meaningful conversations, right? Success just isn't about volume. Just because we have AI doesn't mean we should always be using it. We have to put the human in AI as well. It's really about strategy, personalization, and consistency. And many of us that have been doing this for a really long time learned that the real differentiator in sales development work is how well we understand our audience. And so I guess I wanted to think about, since it's been so long since we started writing the content, what advice would I give to myself back when we started writing this? I think there's a few key points that came up. Some around be an expert in sales development and your products and services. We have a role to do, but we need to really understand what we're selling and understand the value that we bring as an organization to our prospects. And so expertise in one or the other isn't enough. You have to be an expert in both. The second item would be around like pivoting when it makes sense to, right? Measure what matters for the impact and results, not necessarily just checking a box. Just because you made 30,000 phone calls this month, is it really moving the needle? Third would probably be align everything you do to the commercial goal. And because sales development sits as sort of a cog between marketing and sales and can report into marketing or report into sales, everything that they're doing as a team should be aligned to that commercial goal. And then look for ways to be innovative without, not just with AI, but the best teams blend a combo of understanding automation and empathy actually to connect authentically. And then one last piece I think I would give to everybody, quality over volume, get back on the phones.
Get back on the phones. I love it, Monica.
That's
Your
not,
chapter.
don't email everybody all day long, a cadence. That stuff's great. Having a true conversation and understand what you're solving by connecting your prospect to the smart people in your organization.
That's awesome. And speaking of smart people and organizations, Monica, I saw you in your chapter had some really valuable information on how to determine how many phone calls you should be making, how to determine what's quality. Those things are so
It
helpful.
changes too. It changes all the time. And but you have to watch them, you have to figure out what you're measuring for insight versus what you're measuring to determine performance. Really important consideration.
I love that. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of your information with us. And our next chapter comes from a person who I know that we have often worked beside Monica, Annalisa Preissner, who shared information on the role of solution and sales engineer, an absolute critical one.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because a lot of smaller companies don't employ this role. And I think it puts a lot of burden on other departments in the organization when it doesn't exist to have this sit inside of sales. So, what is your solution engineer, your architect? They're someone that is reviewing the customer technical needs or requirements, and they're aligning your product and your solution to match and fit those needs. And there are three critical elements that they supply in doing this and having this role sit in the sales group. One is they act as a liaison between product sales, product, and operations. And this is helpful for a few reasons. Number one is you're not taxing those other pieces of the organization, and you have somebody that is there for these developing sales and not necessarily for delivery of your services and products. So you're reducing the amount of billable hour time that you waste when you may or may not win a deal, right? But you want to fight for it. But they also ensure that the scope is accurate. So when you get to the point of handover, because they work so closely with those groups, you know that the design will match what your ability to produce is on the operations side. They also provide this tangible connection for the customer. So if you're in software sales, this is extremely important, right? Because they're going to have access to a demo environment. They're going to be able to build prototypes and give your customer visibility into your product. But even if they're not a technical software sales engineer, they're still going to look at process, right? And help the customer visualize by whiteboarding, by creating process maps and flows to show them how they're going to deliver, you're going to deliver to their needs. But I think also really important is they are a little bit less salesy than the sales team that the customer is working in. The ability for them to be on your calls with your customer while you're still working out, discovering their technical needs, to have someone there with immediate knowledge, able to answer those questions on the phone call with your customer is really critical to looking successful to the customer. So this person is going to assist your sales team by having that intricate knowledge of what we've done in the past because they're working across the business and not down one stream or portfolio. So I think that we have to ensure that they know what the competitive landscape looks like, which is not something you may always see if you're only bringing delivery or operations onto a call. And they have to understand how you compete in the market. So they have to have that kind of sales focused customer aspect with that technical knowledge and background.
That's beautiful, Annalisa. That's so perfect. And I think you did such a good job of outlining and understanding really what the subtext of the book is, how to increase and grow revenue without adding sales headcount. And I think what you just described is the nuance that we're looking for here in a sales operations team that says we can support sales and we can support revenue, but it has to be done in a way to think what's best for our customers so we can solve their problems in a way that makes sense for them.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Beautiful chapter. I love it so much. I want to point out to everybody that at the end of the book, there are worksheets so that you can take what every one of these experts has told you and start to figure out how it works for yourself. Our next chapter was on proposals, contracts, and pricing. And following along with what Monica and Annalisa talked about with inside sales and sales engineers, I tried to outline for you how having somebody who is in the proposals, contract, and pricing role in sales operations makes loads of sense, even though, like you've been hearing in all the other chapters, the people in sales ops are tied to and sit beside folks in many other departments. And in this particular one, we are really thinking about our friends in finance. As you're thinking about the duties and responsibilities of folks who are in proposals and pricing and contracts, they have to be really tied to understand what the market looks like and the type of pricing that you want to put out when you're dealing with sales. Our next chapter is written by the conscientious capitalist, my friend Gregg, who talked about sales effectiveness. And so, Gregg, I think sales effectiveness is one of those things that smaller organizations don't think about, but smarter organizations are better off for having this role.
Thanks, Shannon. And I can't thank you enough for inviting me to be part of this endeavor and to your leadership and tenacity to bring it into fruition. Have to admit, like many here, probably we thought this might not ever see the digital light of day, but thanks to you, it will, and it'll see that tomorrow. A well-deserved wipe of the brow. So I started my career as an engineer, and so I still have a little engineer that lives in the back of my head when it comes especially to sales operations and the importance of measuring what really consider to be important leading sort of indicators to what is important to accomplishing whatever the goal is. And different organizations operate differently, of course. But what I've seen from a sales operations standpoint is that they are, in fact, a connector to the rest of the organization that, if done well, can alleviate some of that responsibility on from the shoulders of the sales reps, giving them the ability to concentrate on developing new relationships with great authenticity and understanding. Others have talked about how important it is that I think, especially in B2B space and especially in a strategic B2B environment, the euphemism for big ticket, right? That quantity is not going to get you to where you need to be from an opportunity development standpoint. It needs to be based around quality. And it's worthwhile to have a sales team, sales individuals who appreciate that part of what will make them successful is not just understanding the competitive landscape, how the prospect fits in terms of the ICP, what the buyer personas are that will respond best to your offer, and whether or not you've done a good job of value mapping the problems that you solve to those persona. The metrics themselves are important, and salespeople are notorious, yours truly included, of sometimes skipping a step or three because it feels like data entry work. If that can get more and more automated, obviously that feels to me like that's much more of a sales operations responsibility. Don't look for salespeople necessarily, just from a characteristic and personality standpoint, to embrace this idea of being completely metric driven because that they should be, but they are not always the people who are going to spend the most time paying the attention to what is the level of effort that it takes to engage the prospect, to qualify that prospect, to move them through requirements and analysis, and to finally to a decision. That data is available, and it should be available to the sales team leaders, especially to understand, are we actually putting the effort in that is necessary for our business and for our marketplace and the way that we do things? And for better or for worse, and again, lots of sales folks would push back on this idea, you need to understand that there is a certain amount of effort that has to be put forth in order for the outcome to be created. I've never been anywhere in my career where I was overwhelmed with leads. Own your effort, own your day, own the top of your funnel, and appreciate that if the numbers say that it takes X, Y, and Z kinds of outreach and effort, then use that as your guidepost as to whether or not you're being as productive as you can be on each and every day. And thank you again, Shannon, for doing this. I'm humbled. I'm honored to be among such a elite group of experts, and it's been my real pleasure to make a contribution to this book.
Oh, Gregg, thanks so much. We love your chapter. It's so good. And I like that you and Monica are talking about quality over quantity. And I think one of the things we try to point out in sales operations is the numbers are there. We all want to make data-driven decisions, but the reality is we're pushing for an outcome, and that really includes quality. Quality in outcome is really critical. I see you've got a question, Gregg, which is, have you seen what the gang at GTM Engine are doing on the sales data entry side of things?
I think the answer to that actually might be a qualified yes. The words GTM and engine find themselves together in a lot of different places, so I may not be explicitly connecting the dots correctly, but I think the answer is yes, and maybe they can share some additional information in the chat for the rest of us.
I love it. I would invite everybody in the chat to share your LinkedIn links so that you can connect with yourselves, each other, all of the experts here. That is great. Speaking of experts, the 8th chapter is the role of sales onboarding, training, enablement, and coaching, which we have seen rolled up together. Sometimes in companies, there's just one person doing all of these things in sales operations, but this chapter was deftly written by Dion Major, who leads a company called Revenue by Design. This chapter is beautiful. She goes into the concepts and how you can set up your sales training and onboarding to make sure that your salespeople are ready to go, that they are established when it comes to your business units, your products and services. She talks a little bit about how that position might look as you continue to grow your revenue without adding additional sales headcount. And I love her chapter, and I want to thank Dion for making her contribution. And sorry she couldn't join us today, but encourage you to find and follow her because she too writes a prolific amount of content, including multiple books on how to make your sales engine roar. The next chapter, I'm super excited to introduce you to Natalie Batista, who now has literally written the book on how to be a CRM or tech app product owner. Natalie, thank you so much for your wonderful chapter and for joining us today.
Hey, Shannon, thank you so much. And I just want to reiterate, it's an honor just to be amongst this group. So thanks for including me. CRM owner, who is this person, right? My chapter discusses who this person is within the company, what are their responsibilities, what this person's title should be, where do they sit within the org, and why do we need this person to begin with? So the CRM owner is a technical, strategic-minded individual, and this person manages your CRM and your sales tools, and they serve sales. That's who they serve. Let's keep that in mind. At the same time, they have to follow IT compliance procedures. So there's always going to be a little bit of a struggle for this person. Their responsibilities are endless. They manage the day-to-day of the CRM and other tools, user maintenance, monitoring integrations, release management, data governance, user training, reporting. I can go on and on, but if you read the chapter, you'll see all the details in their entirety. So when I talk about title of this person, it's very important because titles equal perception. So is this person an administrator? Are they a lead? Are they a project manager? Are they an analyst? Are they all of the above? So some companies are large enough to have a team of individuals who handle each entity and each feature. More than likely, this role, all these jobs fall on one person. So this is why titles are very important, and we get into that into this chapter. When I speak about where this person sits within the company, it's also important. This person interacts with multiple departments. They're going to have competing priorities every day. The natural place for this role is to be within sales operations. This way, the focus and directives are always coming back to sales because we need to ensure that the success of the sales department is always of a revenue generating function. I've seen this role sit in legal, finance, and marketing and IT, but there's always going to be a struggle with the priorities and a loss of focus on the actual goal. So if you look within the chapter, you'll see the details within. So why do we need a dedicated individual? We outline all the deliverables for this person. So both qualitative and quantitative. We also provide some guidance on salary and bonus structure. This person could have multiple degrees. They can be in paths such as business or computer science. They most likely have certificates or certifications within their platform or the tools they own. And they're always participating in ongoing learning due to the constant updates. Just think about the AI piece that we're introducing within this book. AI is new for this person, so the CRM owner needs to be educated on how it will affect their sales tools. So the main takeaway in this chapter is just to mainly understand the CRM owner is to ensure the success of the sales team by managing and implementing the tools needed to drive revenue. This person is tech savvy, they're solution oriented, they're adoption focused, and they can map out a business process with their eyes shut and will be one of the hardest workers on the team. I guarantee it.
A small order, Natalie. A small order. That is incredible. And if you've ever been that person or worked with that person, Natalie couldn't say enough how much pressure and stress and reevaluation happens in this role. And that's why we love it in sales operations, because then it can be driven directly towards helping the sales team generate revenue. Natalie, thank you so much. That chapter was wonderful. And I think anybody who is considering that type of role will see it is a strategic choice. And thinking of strategy, the book now rolls into a couple of chapters that talk specifically about how do you strategize your tech stack, the people that you choose, the way that you roll them out inside of your organization. And so we've got some concepts in there about CRM as a central hub for your sales operations team. That was not changed by COVID or AI. In fact, it becomes even more important. So we talk about how you can choose vendors as you're considering the way that you are operating digitally inside of your sales operations team. And we're getting focused now on sales analysis and business intelligence. And David Radin has a wonderful chapter that talks about heuristic forecasting, because as you've heard from every one of these authors so far, we are dealing a lot in data. So how do you use that data to think about making and retiring your quotas? David, thank you so much for your wonderful and inspiring chapter.
Thank you, Shannon, for having me part of this. One of the things that I thought was interesting, and I think it's good context for those of you who are on here to understand, when Shannon came to me, her request was, what do people make the biggest strategic mistakes on, and what do they understand the least? Can you write about one of those? And we had 3 or 4 that came to the surface, but one of them was almost universally misunderstood, or let's just say that not everybody was able to implement the ideas real well. And I'm talking about executives at the CEO level, at the sales op level. And that was, how do you make the capacity of your sales team meet your goals? Because if your capacity of your sales team is too high, you're wasting money. And if it's too low, you're not going to get your goals at all. So from a strategic standpoint, if I'm a CEO, I want to be able to go to a venture capitalist or some investor and say, hey, this is how we built our sales team, and this is why it's going to bring us to our goals, and needs to be accurate. And if you're on the sales ops side, you need to be able to implement that. So how do you think about that was one of the goals that we decided to pick in order to be able to implement this specific chapter. Now, that being said, with AI, we know that this becomes an iterative approach. We've taken the idea that a salesperson has got capacity just like a robot on an assembly line has got capacity. And how do you take that, and how are you able to functionally get the right process? With AI, now things are going to change in terms of, yes, the capacity is going to be different. You're going to have different combinations of salespeople and sales AI, but the concepts are still the same. So if you're in sales ops, and if your CEO doesn't understand this, and I bet based upon the classes and the workshops that we've done in the past, that your CEO doesn't quite understand it as well as he or she thinks she does, hand them a copy of the book as well so that they can understand it as you're able to bring this to them. And think about each of these concepts that everybody else has talked about. And if one of them is worth its price of admission, the book's going to be gold for you. Thanks for letting me be part of this, Shannon.
Amazing. David, thank you so much for your wonderful chapter. I think we would be nothing if we didn't think about forecasting and pipeline. That's what sales operations does so well. So thank you for your chapter outlining that. I have a chapter in here on training and user adoption, which everyone knows is near and dear to my heart. And then how do you measure sales ops success so that you can move past thinking about it as a cost center full of people who are just causing overhead, but instead saying, hey, they're digging in and helping you with pipeline health and predictability, profitability and efficiency, thinking about process compliance and data integrity. And you've heard everybody so far mention that each of their chapters digs into those specific things. That's what sales operations does so well. Our next chapter really is an exciting one. And Andrew Duncan, we are going to be talking about your chapter. Welcome and thank you so much for your amazing contribution to this book.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's such an honor to be here included with so many mentors of mine. I think for the people who are attending, something to know is that almost everybody in this call has been a mentor to me in some way. So it's just like very thrilling to be able to contribute to this book. So thank you, Shannon, for the opportunity, and to all these amazing mentors that are on this call that have guided me. Sales technology in your sales tech stack and approaching your tech stack has really evolved over the last few years. I think the really cool thing about this book, I know everyone's talked about, oh, this took a couple years to get together. The cool thing about that is how much your tech stack has operated and changed and manifested over those years. And I think something really interesting that I talk about is that you need to be evaluating, and these leaders need to be evaluating their tech stack at a much faster pace than they assume that they need to. We had in COVID automation become king. Everybody went out and they bought the most expensive, the fanciest tools. They spent a ton of money, a lot of operating budget, and went on this kind of risky move to automate all of their sales process. And then all of a sudden, what happened? Google came out and they said, oh my God, everyone's getting a million emails. It's terrible. There's so much spam. We got to shut this down. And all of a sudden, everybody had to pivot to relationship building, as Monica said before. She's been a huge advocate for relationship building and paring down that automation. So your tech stack needs to be evaluated much more frequently as a sales leader. So operationally for teams, I think it's a responsibility not only to the company you work for, but also to the salespeople under you, that you're continuously bringing new technology to them that is going to assist them and help their job and actually be meaningful. And that way you're also not wasting your bottom line and your money. So I think it's an important part of sales operations and being a leader in today's world is just being a bit faster paced, being on top of it. And there's a lot of tips and little tricks and ways that you can continue to evaluate those tech stacks through the year. We will probably change next year. I think we have about a million AI tools out there right now. So if you ask me right now, hey, what's your tech stack looking like right now with AI? It's going to be completely different in 6 months. So is it quarterly? Is it 2 quarters? Every business is going to be a little bit different, but I think it's an important piece of the puzzle of having a successful team and a successful company moving forward with so much rapid growth in technology in the future, especially if Pittsburgh and America is going to become this giant AI hub that people are hoping it is. There are going to be a lot of tools to evaluate. So salespeople, buckle up. It's going to be a wild couple of years. And leaders, it's up to you to make them successful. We need to bring the products to them that are actually meaningful and impactful for their lives.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew. It's funny how your chapter went from thinking about point solutions to going back to platform to going back out to point solutions. And I think that underscores your point about auditing your stack over and over again. So thank you for your insights and your passion for this chapter and topic. I appreciate it so much.
Appreciate it.
The last chapter that I want to talk about is written by Dr. Doreen Saletti, and she's talking about the future of sales operations, which is very apropos for a sales scholar. Dr. Saletti leads the sales and marketing department at Point Park University. Dr. Saletti, thank you so much for thinking about what does sales operations look like in the future and adding it to this book.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for inviting me to be part of this journey. And in some ways, I think I had a lot of fun in trying to predict the future, but also a lot of challenges in trying to do just that. When we think about this book and the focus on growth, the transformation of sales operations from a reactive transactional support function into a strategic driver of scalable revenue is really critical. Where do we go from there? We know that we need to continue to be strategic. We know that we have to build in technology. We know that we have to rethink hiring. A couple of key things that I'll highlight that we should all be thinking about as we move forward in our sales operations journey is that we really want to make sure we're shifting from providing administrative support to strategic enablement. And AI is one of the things that can best help us to do that. We can use predictive analytics, we can optimize territories, we can even provide real-time sales guidance. So there's so much that's happening around that idea of strategic enablement. And when we think about the kind of support we can provide for sales teams, we can continue to think about how we streamline our workflows, how we can automate tasks, how we can, as Monica said before, get sales reps back to making their calls and actually focusing on sales. And technology allows us to do a lot of this. We have the ability to use analytics in different ways, and that will continue to be refined. More than just data-driven insights, we can leverage AI to interpret both structured and unstructured data. And that can, again, be critical as we move forward in our sales operations journey. As Professor Nichols talked about earlier, when we think about talent and upskilling and strategic hiring, that's really essential because we're looking for, as we talked about with the CRM and the reps, we're looking for a different skill set and we're looking for a more refined skill set. We can also think about what technology leadership looks like for sales operations. Can we architect a lean integrated tech stack, as Andrew mentioned, that really makes a difference for us, that prioritizes tools that improve the sales experience? And of course, thinking about the customer journey. How do we ensure a seamless and more personalized customer experience across all touch points? So there are definitely a lot of things that are happening out there, much of them being driven by tech, but also really looking at some of the shifts to anything as a service, for example, to the refinements and the ways that AI is being used. There's just so much out there for those of us who are really invested in sales operations and understand how that drives revenue.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Saletti. Your chapter is wonderful. Your insights are wonderful. And I think thinking about what the future of sales operations holds, it is being decided right here and right now. There are people who have contributed to this book, but there are also people on this call who I know are very passionate people about sales operations as a profession. I know that this is one of the things that many companies think about, many companies look at, they kick the tires around. And I think this group of people that I'm looking at right here has done such a wonderful, remarkable job, not only at making the shape in their career, but in also lending their talents and their insights to put these words down on paper and share it in this incredible book for all of you. The Sales Ops Design Shop is available tomorrow. It launches on Kindle. And we have a special one first day launch price. Amazon will allow you to do that, which is exciting. So tomorrow we will be launching it and you'll all get the link to buy it for $2.99, which is amazing and incredible when you look at the worthwhile worldwide experience that is sitting right in front of you. So I will share that link with everybody. It is honestly one of those books I think you'll turn to over and over again. We put action worksheets at the end. Every one of these authors thought through what are the things that I would want to know before I launch myself full speed ahead into this moment. And so the worksheets will help you make your way through as you're making decisions. Do I want to carve out somebody who's a sales engineer? Do I want to think about having a player coach role or launching an entire inside sales team? This information is there for you to work through, but so are these wonderful experts. I've been watching the chat go crazy while we were on the call, so please feel free to put your LinkedIn link inside of there. If there are any questions, I will take them now, but while we're waiting for that, I want to ask all of you wonderful friends of mine and very smart sales operations people to give me one smile because I'm going to screenshot this so that we can share it later. I'm going to give you a 3 and a 2 and a 1. Incredible, amazing. I'm sure it was perfect. I do want to extend my thanks to everybody who dialed in today. There were so many of you who sent messages saying, I can't wait to get my hands on this book. And I got to tell you, all of the people that contributed to this book feels the same way. This has been a long time coming, but I am thrilled beyond belief to get it out there and already thinking what a version 2 might look like as we continue to see changes come in the sales operations landscape. We know sales is one of the best professions on the planet. It is a helping profession. And one of the things that's really cool about sales operations is you get to help the people who are helping the people. And I just want to thank you all so much for contributing to this book, for staying the course, for thinking through how you can take your lifetime of experience and putting it into a few short pages to help the people who are considering rolling this out there. I do see we've got a question here. Did I hear someone say they might hire a sales ops resource before a salesperson? I would think you'd need a couple salespeople before needing sales ops. What are your thoughts? Who wants to talk?
I suggested that. And when you're looking at the important things Andrew mentioned about your tech stack, and that sales ops is going to be the nerve center that touches on all these different domains that Natalie and everyone else mentioned, you may want to have some architecture and foundation before you start to deploy customer facing resources into the field. So it's not the only way or the way, but it is a consideration given how much technology, process, and architecture are going to determine the direction and the workflows that you'll set up for those individuals that you'll be investing in.
I think we've also, Shannon, you and I, and maybe Annalisa have had conversations before about, wouldn't it be lovely to walk into an organization and there not be a system set up? We can build it from scratch with the knowledge that we have, and then pull the people in and train them on it, instead of having to go back and rewrite something, which is why groups like Shannon's are around, because we go and build something without thinking about the bigger picture, how we're going to actually use it. So to Scott, you were talking about the very thing I've been wishing I could do all along when I've joined an organization.
I love it. Thanks, Larry, for getting back into that question. And I think, Scott, your idea, your concept is really something that we've all thought about before. And when you're a salesperson and you've got a quota, you've got a target on your back, you don't have time to sit around and build a plane while you're flying it. Having it laid out for you, and especially in the case like Larry pointed out, if you've got some funding and you know you're going to bring in a bunch of salespeople, having them walk into a house that's got a foundation built but no walls isn't really helpful. Any other questions or insights that anybody wants to share? All right, amazing. That's because you all put all of your knowledge into this book. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. I am just beyond thrilled and grateful to have my name alongside all of these wonderful, incredible experts who I do think really embody what it means to think about sales operationally so that you can get out there and help as many people as you can and grow revenue without adding headcount. Thanks, everybody, so much. Good luck on launch day tomorrow.